Hello everyone and welcome to this new video about the 16 Dart top tips that every Flutter developer should know. These tips will help you write more effective code in your Dart and Flutter applications, and whether you're an experienced developer or not, this video should have something valuable for you. So make sure to like and subscribe for more Flutter videos, and let's get started with my 16 top tips. Tip number 1. Did you know that Dart supports string multiplication? Well, Christmas is coming soon, so let's make a Christmas tree with a for loop. And all we have to do is to iterate from 1 to 5, and inside this loop we can print this Christmas tree emoji times I. And if we run this code, well, here it is. It is not quite straight, but you can play with some padding and get the look that you want. But how is this useful in practice? Well, you can use string multiplication to easily check how a long string fits inside the text widget. For example, here we can multiply this string by 5, and if we hot reload, we can see what the text looks like. Tip number 2. If you need to execute multiple futures concurrently, you can use future.wait. For example, here we have a mock API class that tells us the latest numbers of COVID cases. And if we want to execute all these futures concurrently, we can just call future.wait and pass a list of futures. And the result of this will be a single future that contains the list of results. So by waiting on this future, we can get all the results as soon as they are available. Tip number 3. Did you know that you can add a call method in your Dart classes to make them callable like a function? Here is an example where we have a password validator class with a method named call. And because it's named this way, then we can use this class as if it was a method. In other words, we don't need to type .call here, and we can use the class instance directly like this. Tip number 4 is about how we can save some code when we want to call a callback that could be null. For example, here is a custom widget class that calls this onDragCompleted callback when a certain event takes place. Now, if this void callback is null, then calling it like this would result in a runtime error. And you may have written code like this to work around this problem. But actually, there is a simpler way, and that is to just call onDragCompleted call with the nullAware.operator. So this is how to save code when working with nullable callbacks. Tip number 5 is about anonymous functions and functions as arguments. In Dart, functions are first-class citizens, and this means that they can be passed as arguments to other functions. For example, here is some code that defines an anonymous function and assigns it to a variable. Then this variable is passed to this function, which takes a function argument, and then it is used to greet the user. And this code is valid because this function takes a string argument and returns a string. And this is exactly the signature of this anonymous function. So as long as the types match, then you can pass functions as arguments to other functions. This also means that when you use functional operators such as map, where, and reduce, you can define a function that performs the transformation that you want on your input values, and then you can just pass the function name as an argument to map. In other words, you don't need to expand this to an anonymous function, because the signature of this function is exactly what the map operator expects. Tip number 6 is about collection if and spreads. Collection if and spreads are very useful when you write your UI as code. But did you know that you can even use them with maps? For example, here we are declaring a restaurant map, and we are only adding the average rating and the number of ratings if the add ratings variable is true. And we are doing this with a collection if and the spread operator, because here we are adding more than one key value pair. So make sure to use this to your advantage. Tip number 7 is about how we can iterate through a map in a null-safe manner. For example, let's say that you have a for loop and you want to run some code using all the keys and values of a map. You can do this by iterating on the entries variable, which will give you access to all the key value pairs in a null-safe way. So this code is more concise and less error prone than iterating through the keys and then reading out the values, because in order to do this, you need to use the assertion operator. Tip number 8 is about how to use named constructors to create more ergonomic APIs. For example, suppose that you want to declare a class that can represent a temperature value. But because some people like Celsius and some people like Fahrenheit, you want your class API to be unambiguous. To make everyone happy, you can declare two named constructors for initializing your class with either degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, and you can use initializer lists when you need to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And this all means that you can declare temperature values like this and avoid any confusion. So make sure to use named constructors to improve the design of your classes. And while we are here, we should also talk about getters and setters, which is my tip number 9. As you can see, here I have declared Celsius as a stored variable. But again, users may prefer to get or even set the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. And this is easily done with getters and setters that allow you to define computed variables, and you can use them like this. And now that we have this, it becomes easy to get or set the temperature with either Fahrenheit or Celsius. So make sure to add getters and setters if it makes it easier to use your classes. Tip number 10 is to use underscores for unused function argument. The most common use case for this is when you have a widget that takes a function argument and you don't need to use some or all of the arguments that it gives you. In this scenario, you can declare these arguments with underscores, and this way your code is more readable, and it also carries more meaning because it makes it explicit that you are not using these arguments. Tip number 11 is about singletons and private constructors, and the most important property of a singleton is that there can be only one instance of it in your entire program. This is useful to model things like a file system, and in order to create a singleton in Dart, you can declare a named constructor and make it private with the underscore syntax, and then you can create one static final instance of this class by using this private constructor. And as a result, any code outside this file will only be able to access this class via the instance variable. So this is how you can create singletons, though in general it's best not to use them as they can lead to a host of problems if you are not careful. Tip number 12 is about using sets to represent collections of unique items. The most commonly used collection type in Dart is a list. However, lists can have duplicate items inside them, and sometimes this is not what we want. So whenever we need a collection of unique values, we can use a set. And we can declare a set literal using curly braces. This ensures that all the values are unique, and if we declare a const set, we even get a compiled error if we try to include two items that are equal. And when we work with sets, we have access to useful APIs such as union, difference, and intersection. So when you create a collection, ask yourself if you want its items to be unique and consider using a set. Tip number 13 is about how to use try and catch. Try and catch is often used when working with future-based APIs that may throw an exception if something goes wrong. And there are a few things that you should know. First of all, you can add an on clause that you can use to handle exceptions of different types. And you can also have a fallback catch clause that will handle all exceptions that do not match any of the types above. You can use a rethrow statement to throw the current exception up the call stack while preserving the stack trace. And you can use finally to run some code regardless of whether the feature has completed successfully or not. So if you are using or designing some future-based APIs, make sure to handle exceptions as needed. Tip number 14 is about the most common constructors that you can use to create features in Dart, and these are future.delayed, future.value, and future.error. We can use future.delayed to create a feature that waits for a certain delay and then completes with the value specified in this anonymous function. But sometimes we want to create a feature that completes immediately, and we can use future.value or future.error depending on whether we want to complete with a value or an error. These can be useful in your test code when writing mock classes that simulate the response from your future-based APIs. Tip number 15 is about the most common constructors that you can use to create streams in Dart. So let's take a look at them one by one. You can use stream.fromIterable to create a stream from a list of values. Or if you have just one value, you can use stream.value. You can use stream.empty to create an empty stream. Instead, use stream.error to create a stream that contains an error value. And you can use stream.fromFuture to create a stream that will contain only one value, and that value will only be available when the feature completes. Finally, you can create a periodic stream of events by specifying a duration as the time interval between events and an anonymous function that can generate each event given its index in the stream. So when you work with streams, feel free to use these constructors as needed. Tip number 16 is about synchronous and asynchronous generators. In Dart, we can define a synchronous generator as a function that returns an iterable and uses this sync star syntax. And inside the function, we can generate or yield multiple values that will be returned as an iterable when the function completes. Now, this is a synchronous generator, but we can also create asynchronous generators. An asynchronous generator is a function that returns a string and uses this async star syntax. And inside the function, we can yield values just like we did in the synchronous case. But if we want, we can await on future-based APIs, because this is an asynchronous generator. So it's good to know about synchronous and asynchronous generators, as sometimes they can be handy. Alright, so this wraps up my list of 16 top tips for Dart developers. If you want to see a summary of everything that we have covered in this video, you can find a transcript on my website at codewithandrea.com. Also, if you head over to my tips page, you will find some pages called Dart and Flutter Easy Wins, and here you can discover additional tips about the Dart language. Finally, if you are new to Dart and Flutter or you want to improve your knowledge of the Dart language, you can buy my complete Dart course on Udemy. This contains 10 hours of content covering the most important features of the Dart language, and it also includes exercises, solutions, and practical projects that will help you build your confidence with Dart. And you can buy the course for a discounted price by entering this URL in your browser. And I'm confident that this will help you in your Dart and Flutter programming journey. If you've enjoyed my list of top tips, please like and subscribe for more Flutter videos. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.